a technical observation. The Grant Sawyer room is all blurry. It's if you're at the eye doctor trying to get a prescription fitted.
And Mr. Treasurer, you can start whenever you're ready.
Thank you, Mr. Jimenez. All right, we will call this meeting, the first meeting of the Nevada State Infrastructure Bank for the year of 2020 to order. We'll start with a roll call. Mr. Jimenez?
Treasurer Conine.
Here.
Director Bobzian.
Here.
Director Brown.
Here.
Director Reynolds.
Here.
Director Swallow.
Here.
Thank you, Treasurer Conine. We have five members present, and for the record, we have 2 vacancies, but we have a quorum.
All right, thank you very much, Mr. Jimenez. With that, I'll move on to public comment. Comments from the public are invited at this time. The board intends to limit those comments to 3 minutes. Do we have any comments up in Carson City? Go right ahead, and if you could please introduce yourself.
Thank you very much. It's a pleasure to be here this morning. My name is Jennifer Carr. I'm a Deputy Administrator for the Nevada Division of Environmental Protection. By way of introduction, because I probably haven't met some of you before, my portfolio of responsibilities at NDEP includes our water quality health and protection programs, as well as our Administrative Services Bureau, which includes our water infrastructure financing programs. First and foremost, I just wanted to thank you all for changing the name of your bank's fund from the December proposal to what is on the agenda today as the State Infrastructure Bank Fund. This will help to avoid public confusion with our long-standing State Revolving Fund, or SRF program at NDEP. I also wanted to note that NDEP is enjoying a very good working relationship with the Treasurer's Office. Jason Cooper with my staff and Eric Jimenez with the Treasurer's Office work together often, and we look forward to continued collaboration as we enter the infrastructure financing challenges of 2022. It might be worth noting that NDEP's Office of Financial Assistance, which includes our 3 infrastructure financing programs, reached a milestone last year in that we have successfully distributed over $1 billion with a B, $1 billion since the federal SRF and Nevada Capital Improvements Grants programs were introduced. This funding has been critical in successes for protecting public health and the environment, and that $1 billion has also been leveraged with other infrastructure financing programs like the USDA Rural Development Loan and Grant programs. We just look forward to working with the Nevada Infrastructure Bank and the Treasurer's Office and their staff as we collectively navigate our traditional funding sources, as well as new ones such as the American Recovery Plan Act and the Bipartisan Infrastructure Law in the coming year. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Carr. Any additional public comment in Carson City? Okay, any public comment in Las Vegas? All right, thank you all for being here. And Eric, just confirming there's no public comment on the phone?
I don't believe we have any public comment.
Thank you, Mr. Jimenez. With that, we'll move on, close public comment, and move on to agenda item number 3, approval of the minutes from the State Infrastructure Bank Board Directors meeting from August 16th, 2021. One adjustment, we wanted to change within the minutes that the advice on the legal front came from Deputy Attorney General Justin, and it's T-A-R-U-C, is it Taruk? Taruk, and wanted to make that change. But any other changes or discussions on the minutes? All right, can we have a motion to approve with that change?
Motion to approve.
Perfect. All right, excellent. We've got a motion. Do we have a second?
Second.
We have a second. Thank you very much, everyone. All in favor?
Aye.
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 And that moves on. All right, let's move to agenda item number 4. We are pleased to be joined today by Congressman Stephen Horsford, who's going to give us an update on the Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act and how it will benefit the state of Nevada. Congressman, the floor is yours.
Good morning. This is a very exciting meeting for me to be a part of for the beginning of the 22 calendar year. I want to thank Secretary of the Board and the State Treasurer Conine, as well as State Director Swallow, and all of the leaders and labor leaders who are here, and the members of the Nevada State Infrastructure Bank Board of Directors for allowing me to speak today. I also want to recognize some of the labor leaders who are here today. Rob Benner, Secretary Treasurer of the Building and Construction Trades of Northern Nevada, Bill Stanley, Executive Secretary Treasurer of the Southern Nevada Building Trades Union, and Ted Chandler, Senior Managing Director of Strategic Initiatives for the AFL-CIO Housing Investment Trust, and many others who are here. But I know, and you know, Mr. State Treasurer, that our unions really play a critical role in building our state's middle class. And I look forward to learning from the presentations that will come later in this meeting how we can continue to work together. Last year, Governor Sisolak and Treasurer Conine secured a tremendous victory for Nevada with the passage of the Senate Bill 430, a bipartisan law that expands the types of projects that can be financed through the State Infrastructure Bank. Together, state and local infrastructure investments will create jobs, accelerate our economic recovery from the pandemic, and help Nevada continue to grow in a sustainable way. And I really want to commend you, State Treasurer Conine, because this was an idea that had been talked about for a very long time, back for when I was in the state Senate, but under your leadership, under the governor's leadership, you made it happen. And now this board and its structure is in place, and Nevada is leading the way. There are a lot of states that don't have this infrastructure bank in place to now take advantage of the federal funding that's coming available based on the passage of the bipartisan infrastructure investment and jobs law. I get to say law. It's no longer a proposed idea. It's been signed by the president, and it's law. And we are working literally right now to work with the administration. They have appointed a national czar, Mitch Landrieu, the former mayor of New Orleans, to oversee the federal appropriation for the Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act law. And I know they have encouraged state entities to form a point of contact czar who can help manage these infrastructure investments. And this is not only investments in one particular area. For Nevada, the law means about $4 billion to fund thousands of projects across our state. And I want to highlight just a few areas where that funding will help make an impact. For years, lack of federal investment has left over 1,000 miles of Nevada highway in poor condition, and drivers pay more than $500 a year to repair the damage done to their vehicles by our roads that are in disrepair. Over the next few years, Nevada will receive $2.5 billion in federal highway funds to rebuild our roads, to reduce commute times, and to help goods get to market faster. At the same time, the Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Law recognizes the urgency of reducing greenhouse gas emissions from gas-powered cars. The law includes $38 million in dedicated funding for Nevada to expand our state network of electric vehicle chargers, supporting domestic manufacturing and incentivizing electric vehicle purchases. And I know this week with CES in town, which is our largest convention of the year, a lot of the technologies that we're talking about are actually being showcased, again, right here in our community. And I know with IBEW and a number of the other building trades, you all will play a big part in bringing this infrastructure to use. But we know that modern transportation infrastructure goes beyond cars and highways, especially in our metropolitan areas. And I want to thank our state director for transportation, Director Swallow, for joining me and the RTC at a convening at the RTC Transit Center downtown to talk about the largest investment in public transit ever is included in this Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Law. And so that's a game changer for our veterans, seniors, people who are using transit, particularly buses and other forms of public transit to get to their needed projects. Last week, I joined North Las Vegas Councilwoman Pamela Goins Brown to tour the Apex Industrial Park in North Las Vegas, where currently there are thousands of acres of land, literally vacant land, that are waiting for the water infrastructure that will make that commercial development possible. So just like they've done a great job at the Reno Tahoe Industrial Park, we're trying to bring similar development here to our community in North Las Vegas. And under the Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Law, Nevada will receive $403 million over 5 years to improve and expand water and sewer infrastructure across the state. My district, which covers 52,000 square miles currently and includes 6 of our state's rural counties, over the years, I've seen a series of conversations with rural mayors and community leaders to discuss their support and need to help rebuild from the pandemic. And I know, again, our treasurer has led that conversation with the American Rescue Plan funds across the state. And I want to really commend you for listening to every corner of our state so that they understand that they're a part of this recovery as well. Today, 14% of Nevada households do not have an internet subscription. And 4% of Nevadans live in an area where there is no broadband infrastructure at all. A lot of that is in Lincoln County and White Pine County, the eastern portion of my district. Nevada's rural communities are the backbone of our state, and they deserve the same opportunities as other places. So thanks to the Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Law, Nevada will receive $100 million to expand high-speed internet and to lower internet bills, giving Nevadans more opportunities to earn, learn, and access services like telemedicine. All of these investments, from roads to water to internet access, will also put Nevada on track to a stronger and a more successful future. But the cornerstone of the Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Law will be the impact that it will have on the lives of working people. In a recent study, researchers from Georgetown University estimated that the Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Law will create or save more than 140,000 Nevada jobs over the next decade. These are good paying union jobs in heavily unionized fields, and as we diversify our economy, they will lift countless families into the middle class, or keep them in the middle class. In the weeks and months to come, I look forward to working closely with local leaders and our state officials to make sure that we receive our full allocation of these dollars. I got to now watch this money as it comes to make sure it gets to the places, to the communities who need it the most, and that we are all being held accountable to how these funds are dispersed, right? And so it's not only going to one agency. The transportation will play a big role, but Commerce is actually handling broadband. EPA is playing a big role in the water aspect and infrastructure, and there's wildfire mitigation funding for the airports, and a lot of other things that we also have to address. But beyond the $4 billion allocated to Nevada, we're also eligible for hundreds of millions of dollars in application-based grant funding, which again, our state treasurer has been at the forefront of helping us streamline that process so that we can be more effective at getting Nevada's share of these dollars. And I'm committed to making sure that we work together at the federal level within our entire delegation. This is not me alone. This is our entire delegation delivering for Nevada. But my office will continue to work with our private and public sector partners to help make sure that these grant applications are complete, that they're competitive, and that they really meet the needs of our community. So again, thank you, State Treasurer Conine, for your tremendous leadership. I'm so excited. You know, we talk about infrastructure a lot over the course of the last few previous years. Well, we're not talking about it anymore, we're doing it. And this infrastructure bank in Nevada is going to be instrumental in making sure that we really leverage the opportunities, not just for the next couple of years to recover, but really to build back Nevada better in a more equitable and inclusive way that does not leave any community or individual out. And that is something that's really important to me based on the diversity of constituents that I represent. So with that, Mr. Treasurer, I will yield back to you and thank you for the opportunity to come in and address the board.
Well, Congressman, let me just start with saying, we wouldn't have the opportunity to talk about this infrastructure jobs law if you hadn't worked to make sure that it went from an idea to reality. I know that took a lot of time and a lot of work, a lot of compromises, but you know, you mentioned two of my favorite things, jobs, and grants. And so we're excited to be able to talk about those. And I think, you know, one of the benefits of us setting up the infrastructure bank is that it allows us to convene in one space folks who have been doing infrastructure work really well in the transportation side, but also to bring in new ideas and figure out ways that we can help on the economic development side and others. Are you willing to take any questions if any members of the board
Please
have any questions? I'll open it up
If I
to.
can't answer, that Asha will.
I'll open up the congressman to members of the board. Members? Any questions up north? Or Director Brown? Oh, you might be muted, sir.
All right, yes, Congressman, thank you. Mitch Landrieu has reached out and we had a meeting yesterday of all the relevant parties. Governor convened it and we will be ready.
We don't have to get ready because we stay ready, as they say. So
I was gonna say, we are ready, we're spending the money already, so, yes.
Thank you, Director. Any additional questions? All right. Congressman, you're absolutely, of course, welcome to join us for the rest of the meeting, but I know you've got a lot going on, so you have to duck out. We appreciate you. Thank you so much. All right, with that, we'll close item number 4 and move on to informational item number 5, a presentation on the need to expand registered apprenticeship and apprenticeship readiness programs to capitalize on the Investing in Infrastructure and Jobs law. I'll turn it over up north. I believe we've got Rob Benner, the Secretary Treasurer of the Building and Construction Trades of Northern Nevada, and down here, Mr. Stanley, if you could join us at the table. William Stanley is the Executive Secretary Treasurer of the Southern Nevada Building Trades Union. Please, come on up. Come on up.
Good stuff.
We also have James Halsey from IBEW Local 357. Mr. Benner, go ahead.
Talk about apprenticeships and the many benefits it offers to Nevada's communities and working families. Slides.
There we go.
Is that the right slide?
Yeah.
Okay. For those who are listening that may not be familiar with us, Building Trades is an umbrella group over many of our construction trade unions in Nevada. I'll be presenting for both North and South Building Trades today, and then we'll turn it over for questions for both either I or Bill. Today we represent 13 different trades and over 25,000 members here in the state of Nevada. All of our trades are focused on providing free, state-of-the-art workforce training programs to make sure that Nevada has the construction workforce it needs to keep Nevada's economic development moving forward. So today we'll be talking briefly about what is a registered apprenticeship, what programs do we have here in Nevada, and apprenticeship utilization on publicly financed projects. So what is apprenticeship? In the building trades, registered apprenticeship is a Department of Labor recognized voluntary industry-driven training program. Apprenticeship programs can be implemented by employers or by partnerships of business and a labor union. Registered building trade apprenticeship programs differ from other training programs in three key ways. The first is federally compliance for standards. All these programs choose to come under state and federal regulations ensuring their quality. Second is our unique combination of on-the-job training and classroom instruction. These jobs are truly earn while you learn and give the participants hands-on experience in real world. In fact, we don't even take an apprentice unless we have a job for them. The last difference is that the cooperative approach between employers and workers through a joint apprenticeship training committee, a unique way of bringing together management and labor to make sure both of their needs are met. That way, the apprentices are being trained for the cutting-edge skills that contractors need. The results speak for themselves. Building trades apprenticeship programs offer the highest level of training and continuing education to our graduates. Journey people continue to train as new technologies emerge. And both the trades themselves and their signatory contractors invest well over $1 billion a year nationally in long-term training facilities and equipment. These are some of the benefits that these programs offer. Registered apprenticeships lead people to good-paying, transformational jobs that can lift entire families into the middle class while building the workforce and infrastructure our state so desperately needs. These jobs provide six-figure careers, they let you earn while you learn, and there's no college debt. They're all nationally recognized, and they can take their skills anywhere in the country. Many of the programs offer college credit, and they all offer state-of-the-art education for their industries. These programs are also really great for employers who choose to participate in them. Not only does it give them a steady, high-quality workforce, it also is good for their bottom line. By working with apprenticeship programs, employers reduce turnover, improve retention, and have about a $1.47 increase productivity for each dollar they invest. The reason behind this is when workers go through an apprenticeship program, they know the path they're on and where they're going to end up. When someone gets into a building trades apprenticeship program, everything is structured and they have a clear vision of their path forward, which makes them more likely to stick with that program. These programs offer an average starting salary of $50,000 a year, debt-free education, and clear career path with lots of room for upward growth. These credentials are nationally recognized and portable. And remember, this isn't an alternative to college, this is college. This is a list of the building trades here in Nevada that have registered apprenticeship programs. These programs cover the spectrum in construction. If you can think of it, there's probably at least one registered apprenticeship program here in Nevada that teaches it. As of November 2021, here in Nevada, there are 71 registered apprenticeship programs and almost 6,000 currently active apprentices. Less than 200 of these apprentices are in non-trade programs, and only 13 of these registered programs are in anything other than in the construction trades. As I mentioned earlier, these jobs are pathways out of poverty for the working class people and their families. Here are the journeyman rates for our trades and how long it would take for a family of 4 and a family of 8 to get out of poverty at first-year apprenticeship wages. As you can see from this chart provided by SNAB2, in most cases, these jobs will lift a family of 4 out of poverty in less than 6 months. So where is Nevada at on apprenticeship utilization? In 2019, the legislature passed and the governor signed SB 207, which requires contractors and subcontractors to employ apprentices on public works projects, and it's working. Our programs train and provide the apprentices that they need. Over time, as these apprentices gain experience and journey out, they become the core of Nevada's construction workforce and then train the next generation of apprentices. Right now, the average age of a construction worker is in their late 40s. And considering that most construction workers retire in their mid-50s, we're looking at losing half our construction workforce in the next 10 years. We need to make sure that we're training enough apprentices now to avoid a massive shortage of workers due to a silver tsunami. We need a statewide strategy to avoid this. While it is a potential crisis, it's also a huge opportunity. And we're already working at the state level all the way down to our local school districts to make sure Nevada's workers are fully positioned and prepared. We have special pre-apprenticeship programs that work with disadvantaged communities, including low-income, communities of color, and the incarcerated, using the nationally recognized multi-craft core curriculum. This training helps ensure that these students are successful when they get into our apprenticeship programs. They learn safety protocols and basic hands-on skills with tools and construction equipment and provide them with an OSHA 10 certification. We work with the Clark County School District Adult Ed to provide MC3 at High Desert Prison in the South, giving incarcerated people an opportunity at a new life and a career once they serve their sentences. The South also provides MC3 through Nevada Partners. In the North, we work with the Children's Cabinet, which works with at-risk youth, and we've just formed a partnership with Washoe County School District to implement the MC3 program district-wide in the high schools here in Northern Nevada, starting with Sparks High this semester, which is a Title I school. And with that, concludes my presentation. We can take questions.
Thank you, Mr. Benner. I appreciate it. And just for any members who aren't able to see the presentation from you, it is in the packet and will be on YouTube. I guess we're having a bit of a technical thing down here. We can't see your presentation, but we could hear your words, and they were lovely, Mr. Benner. So thank you. Any questions from members?
Treasurer Conine, I just wanted to say, this is Terry Reynolds, Director for the Department of Industry. I want to thank Mr. Brenner for an excellent presentation on apprenticeships. As you know, the apprenticeship program was moved under the Labor Commissioner's office, and our Commissioner Shannon Chambers and Executive Director of the Apprenticeship Council, Rich Williams, been working to get going and have lost no time. They've created a couple new apprenticeship programs within the last several months, and very aware of the program with the high schools. We're working with the superintendent and looking at getting some funding so we can expand that program on a statewide basis, because we think that has incredible potential, and we need to get down to the high school level to get these apprenticeship programs going. So I just really want to thank you for your support and working with our department and with the Labor Commissioner to make this happen. And continue on, and we look forward to it. Thank you.
Oh, thank you.
Thank you, Member Reynolds. Any additional questions? All right, seeing none, Mr. Benner, I just want to thank you yet again for you, Mr. Stanley, Mr. Halsey, and the rest of the members of organized labor who are in the room, who are working to make sure that families in Nevada have a path into the middle class each and every day. We love you for it. So thanks for that. And with that, we'll close that item and move on to informational item number 6, a presentation on the AFL-CIO's Housing Investment Trust and opportunities for partnership with the Nevada State Infrastructure Bank. Mr. Chandler, I can see you. If you could please screen share your presentation, I think that would allow us to get it down here.
Very good.
Please
Thank
go
you,
ahead.
Treasurer Conine and members of the board. I am joined by my colleague, Amari McClellan, the Housing Investment Trust, who is running the operation here, and appreciate the opportunity to make this presentation to you on the AFL-CIO Housing Investment Trust and our proposal. So, Amari, why don't we, let's get started here. The AFL-CIO Housing Investment Trust is a mutual fund. We were created in 1984 as the successor to a loan fund that had been started by the AFL-CIO in the 1960s, in the mid-1960s. And in the mid-60s, the concept came from discussions between AFL-CIO President Meany and the Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. about how the labor movement and the civil rights movement could work together to advance progressive causes. And one of the ideas that they hit on was the use of union pension funds to finance construction of affordable housing. And we began it at that time and converted to a mutual fund structure in 1984. A fundamental requirement of the investment of our dollars is that 100% of all on-site construction be performed by union labor, and that includes by apprentices who are enrolled in registered apprenticeship programs. And you can see at the bottom here a variety of different projects that we have funded, that we have currently under construction across the country, from New England to Hawaii. So we do quite a variety across the country. I want to go on here, Mari. As you can see on this slide, we have about $7 billion in assets under management. While we were established by the AFL-CIO, we are not a department or a division of the AFL-CIO. We're owned by our investors, who are 364 union funds, primarily pension funds. More than 90% of the capital comes from pension funds. As a mutual fund, we are a registered investment company. We have the same legal structure as other mutual funds with which you're familiar, I'm sure, although we are internally managed. I work for our investors. I don't work for a separate investment advisor. So everything is controlled by our board of our investors. As a mutual fund, we have as our first obligation to earn a competitive rate of return through our investments for our investors. We do that by investing in government-backed, mortgage-backed securities, Fannie Mae, Freddie Mac, Ginnie Mae, MBS. These are federally backed, federally guaranteed investments. So it goes back to the concept that we can perform and advance a social good, the construction of affordable housing using union labor, while earning a little bit more than our investors would earn on United States Treasury securities or on directly federally government-backed securities. So while to our investors we are a fixed income mutual fund, the way I put it is that the AFL-CIO didn't create us because it thought the world needed another bond fund. They created us to advance economic and social interests as well in terms of job creation and creation of affordable housing. So let's go on here, please. And you can see here our results since 1984. We have financed construction of more than 560 projects across the country. Because our funds revolve, our $7 billion in assets revolve as projects are completed or as they pay back their loans, we can recycle that money into new loans. We have invested nearly $10 billion of pension capital in affordable housing development in a broad variety of communities. At the bottom here, you see developments from permanent supportive housing for people experiencing homelessness in San Francisco and Chicago, to an economic development investment through the use of New Markets tax credits in public library, and in the lower right, teacher housing, workforce housing for teachers that we financed in the most rural, lowest income county in West Virginia. which recently opened. So we've been able to bring our financing to a very wide variety of communities. The next slide, please. And you can see here that while a plurality of our investments are in what I'll call Union America, the most highly unionized construction areas of the country, the Bay Area and New York City, the upper Midwest and Boston. What really stands out to me is that a majority of our investments, more than 300 of the 562, are not in the locations in which have the highest union density in the construction trades. And so to me, it really demonstrates the geographic breadth that we've been able to have. And this also shows you again the economic impact, where our investments have been in development that totals more than $18 billion in costs, and we've created overall more than 200,000 union construction jobs and over 120,000 affordable housing units, 2/3 of them affordable. The next slide, please. This map shows you where the HIT has financed developments and also where affiliates of labor unions have developed or own affordable housing. It's in 29 states across the country in which the HIT has financed development and in which nonprofit affiliates of labor unions have developed and owned affordable housing. As you can see from this map, it is a very wide variety of states in which the labor movement has been an investor or an owner in affordable housing. So there's a long history of union involvement in the development of affordable housing and the ownership of affordable housing. And the developments for which there are photographs are ones in which we have recently financed the construction or rehabilitation of union-owned housing, or which are in our pipeline to do so. And the one that I want to highlight, of course, is the one in Reno, Carville Park Apartments in Reno, which is owned by the Northern Nevada Development Corporation, a nonprofit affiliate of the Northern Nevada Building and Construction Trades Council. So we are hopeful to be able to work with NNDC and with the State Infrastructure Bank on the redevelopment and rehabilitation of Carville Park. But as you can see from this map, it's part of a national movement over decades of labor movement involvement in affordable housing. The next slide, please. This table shows our investment at the Housing Investment Trust in recent financings of union-affiliated projects. This is over the last 5 or so years, investing in union-affiliated developments in New York City, in Cleveland, in rural locations like Salinas, California, and Rolla, Missouri, and then in some unlikely locations like San Antonio, Texas, where we recently closed a rehabilitation of 250 apartments in a high-rise building on the Riverblock. And I mentioned the development in Welch, West Virginia as well, a rural location, where in all these locations we've been able to have a 100% union workforce, pardon me, in every one of them utilizing apprentices who are learning in registered apprenticeship programs. The next slide, please. So we come to you with a proposal for a way in which the state of Nevada can participate with union pension funds, with developers who have a long-term commitment to the use of union labor to get affordable housing built, and at the same time create jobs for local residents that can lead to careers in construction. So the concept is to use the State Infrastructure Bank funding as a way to attract and leverage pension fund capital and as a way to support construction of affordable housing that does create careers in construction for local residents. The parameters would be that the infrastructure bank financing be part of the layered capital financing from several different sources that goes into making affordable housing construction feasible. There would be pension fund investment in the first mortgage debt from an investor such as the HIT. Public funds would supplement the first mortgage debt, and private investors would come in to provide equity through the established affordable housing programs to get affordable housing built. The next slide, please. What we're proposing is that developers leverage the existing programs that are used to build affordable housing, and in particular, federal low-income housing tax credits, or otherwise require income restricted rents to make sure there's long-term commitment to affordability, but also that there's a long-term commitment on the part of the developers to employing registered apprentices. Affordable housing development, in many cases, the construction period may be 6, maybe up to 12 months of construction. In any given trade, if a tradesperson is on the site for 90 days on a residential development, that's a good length of time to be on the development. But of course, when someone becomes indentured into an apprenticeship program, they're looking forward to a 20 or 30-year career. And when someone's indentured, that union is making a commitment to that person that they will have good work for decades. And you can't bring somebody into an apprenticeship with the idea that it will be a 20 or 30-year career on the basis of a 70 or 90-day job. And that's why we propose that the developers have a long-term commitment to the use of union labor, that they commit to a minimum number of hours that apprentices enrolled in state registered programs will be able to work, so that we make sure that there is a commitment to creating opportunities for careers in construction, and also that they enter into the agreements that permit local hiring to be a priority. Project labor agreements are important because that's the way in which the building trades can make a commitment for the local hire as well. So that's a key piece of the proposal. The next slide, please. We'd also suggest that the program focus on pension fund investors who have a demonstrated track record of success in financing construction of affordable housing. Want to make sure that folks are familiar with the programs that are used to build affordable housing, that it's not simply opportunistic financing, but it's financiers that have experience and have a long-term commitment to the area. And I do want to note that what we're proposing has analogs in existing affordable housing funding. There is a set aside within the federal home program, Home Investments Partnership Program, as its full name is, a set aside for community housing development organizations. And so the set aside that we are suggesting is similar to that which is in the home program. The next slide, please. I also wanted to give you a little bit of background that this is not a new idea to have this kind of program. In the mid-1990s, Congress enacted and HUD carried out a program called the Community Investment Demonstration Program that allocated federal subsidies, project-based rental assistance, to pension fund investors who applied to HUD, who then allocated that assistance to particular developments. Under that program, the HIT was awarded an initial $100 million in 1994 We ended up with a total of $115 million under that program. It was intended to run for 5 years. It ran for 2 as when Congress turned over. The funding ended for the program, but it was a competitive allocation process in which we applied and were awarded funding. Have the next slide, please. And under that program, we were able to finance 18 developments across the country. The funding leveraged our capital, another $68 million of our capital. And in that short period of time, we were able to invest in construction of nearly 2,000 units of housing and create more than 1,500 of union construction jobs through those investments. At the time, we had less than $700 million in capital, and it also enabled our growth into the $7 billion fund that we are today. The next slide, please. And you can see here the geographic breadth that we were able to achieve with the prior program, prior community investment demonstration program. Rural areas in Maine, in northern Maine, in the border region of Texas, Laredo, Texas, and El Paso, Texas, in some other unlikely locations such as New Orleans and Atlanta, as well as the Northeast and coastal California, where you might think it would be more common. The next slide, please. And this is a list of the projects that we financed through the original Community Investment Demonstration Program. I should note that we are also advocating that the current Congress revive the Community Investment Demonstration Program and are suggesting in a variety of locations across the country that this can be a model for creating not only additional affordable housing, but making sure that it's built the right way, that leveraging affordable housing resources, not only for the residents of that low-income housing, but also enabling local residents to enter into middle-class careers in construction, an opportunity to earn fair wages, good benefits, and a modest pension, and in fact, lift people out of low-income status so that affordable housing construction can have a double impact. The next slide. And I think that this slide shows the total impacts that we were able to have under that program. You have this in your materials, so I will leave at this slide because I think this is our presentation. And I thank you very much for your time, and of course available to answer any questions that you might have.
Mr. Chandler, thank you. Before I turn over to questions from the board, I just want to welcome Governor Sisolak, who's joined the meeting. Of course, we wouldn't have a funded state infrastructure bank if it wasn't for him and his efforts. Thank you, sir. Wonderful time to join us because we're talking about affordable housing. I know that's near and dear to your heart.
Very important, right?
I'll turn it.
All my labor partners and friends being here. Thank you. Thanks for showing up, everybody. This is important to all of us.
Perfect. I'll turn it over to members for any questions.
Yes, Mr. Treasurer, I've got one. I wanted to circle back on the mention that was made of the Carville development. I seemed to understand that there was some interest with the fund and looking at opportunities there. And I wonder if you could kind of talk about that opportunity a little bit more, and perhaps as that relates as a model, toe in the water, if you will, for other projects around the state.
Sure. Carville Park in Reno is a 208-unit development built in the late 1970s that is owned by the Northern Nevada Development Corporation, nonprofit affiliate of the Building and Construction Trades Council of Northern Nevada. Mr. Benner is the president of both the Building and Construction Trades Council, and NNDC, the Northern Nevada Development Corporation. That development is 100% subsidized by a federal rental assistance contract. And we have a unique opportunity, or I should say NNDC has a unique opportunity there with that substantial resource that they bring. I didn't get under the hood on that in my presentation, but it's a substantial federal commitment already there at Carville Park that can be used in the redevelopment of Carville Park. It's also mobile. And as we're able to identify additional affordable housing projects in Washoe County in particular, but in other areas of the state as well, that those resources are available so long as we can make the redevelopment of Carville Park itself feasible. So we can basically turn the redevelopment, the existing development and redevelopment of Carville Park into more affordable housing than just the rehabilitation of Carville Park would offer. But we do need the additional assistance to leverage both the federal funds that are there and the pension funds that are there. Did that answer your question?
Yes, it does. And I just wanted to highlight that that was important that you mentioned that, because it shows the experience on the ground already in the state in working with this model. I'm familiar with the project and definitely appreciate the need that it serves.
Great, thank you.
Thank you, Member Bobzian. Any other questions from members? The Director Brown, Director Reynolds, Director Swallow? All right. Seeing no additional questions, I just want to make a quick comment, which was when we originally started talking about this bank, it was all around the leveraging of outside sources of capital coming into Nevada, right? How could we spend a dollar and leverage that through the outside? And I'm excited. This is the first of those conversations we're going to have. And Mr. Chandler, I want to thank you and your team for being so willing and available to have these conversations with us. And of course, our friends, our brothers and sisters in labor for coming to support. Thank you, Mr. Chandler.
You're welcome. Thank you very much.
And with that, thank you, sir. With that, we'll move on to item number 7, discussion and for possible action of the approval of a 30-day public comment period for staff to solicit feedback on the proposed capital allocation of the State Infrastructure Bank Fund and to report back to this board regarding any such comments and approval to pursue the regulation-making process where needed. Mr. Jimenez?
Thank you, Mr. Treasurer. As this board may remember, in our last meeting, we had a discussion of the provisions of NRS 408-55071, which give the board the authority to adopt certain bylaws, policies, and procedures related to the selection of projects and the operation of this bank. In consultation with the Attorney General's office, we believe that the board should adopt certain policies and procedures. One, for the $75 million that was included in the 2021 capital improvement program, but also in the forthcoming agenda items for the governance of the bank. In this proposed capital allocation, what we're proposing with this agenda item would be to open a 30-day public comment window for essentially 3 set-asides within that $75 million. You just heard from Mr. Chandler from the AFL-CIO's HIT funds, and we're suggesting here as a starting place for $20 million to be used for the construction of affordable housing under a similar model that had been used with the Northern Nevada Development Corporation. And we've started some conversations in Southern Nevada to see if a model could be replicated there so we could implement something like this statewide. 2, this is for up to $15 million for charter schools in low-income communities, so Title I schools, to encourage more charter school development, to ensure that they can get lower cost financing so we can have more nonprofit operators. In short, this would ensure that more dollars would stay in the classroom and not go to for-profit entities. We've talked with the Charter School Authority and many advocates on this particular issue, and it is a need in the community. And then finally, I think to highlight Congressman Horsford's point earlier in the meeting, there is an incredible opportunity. I think there's something like $350 billion in competitive grant funding in the Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act, most of which requires some level of state match to leverage those federal dollars which we do not currently have appropriated. We're suggesting through this process to evaluate the use of $40 million or up to $40 million to leverage those funds and structure those in a way that we could revolve them quickly so the state doesn't leave opportunity on the table for those particular competitive grants. I'm happy to walk through it, or we can just take questions from the board if it pleases you, Mr. Treasurer.
Thank you, Mr. Jimenez. Let's turn it over to questions from the board. I think there's a ton of information in there. I'd rather focus on questions, especially because I think we're dipping our toe in the water with a 30-day public comment period and getting as much feedback as we possibly can as we go. Any questions from members? None down in Las Vegas. Any questions in Carson City? Seeing none. Director Brown, just give us a wave if you got anything. All right. Great. Thank you, sir. I appreciate that. With that, I'll take a motion to open that 30-day public comment period.
So moved.
Motion by member Swallow. Do I have a second?
Second.
Thank you. We've got a motion and a second. Any discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All right, the motion is unanimous. Moving on to agenda item number 8, the approval of the 30-day public comment period for staff to solicit feedback on the financing application for qualified borrowers of the State Infrastructure Bank and to report back to this board regarding any such comments and approval to pursue the regulation making process when needed. Mr. Jimenez.
Thank you, Mr. Treasurer. Again, at the previous board meeting, staff was directed to start to draft the process for a financing application, which is required by statute. The document that you see starting on page 45 of your packet was constructed largely based on the California iBank, the California Infrastructure and Development Bank, which started with about $100 million and is well over $1 billion in its fund, something we aspire to be with this bank, and I would argue probably one of the better operating state infrastructure banks in the country. Most of this application was taken with those in mind from the California program, then restructured based on our statutory constraints or opportunities with the types of borrowers that are eligible under statute, the types of projects, and then also ensuring that, as you will see in the next agenda item, that we hone in on whether or not applicants are committed to using the types of labor that we would like to see, the projects will create the types of jobs that the state needs to recover from the pandemic, and that we're also keeping in mind the climate and environmental impacts of those as well. So this is a long application. That's why we wanted to go through a 30-day process for this. Unlike the previous agenda item and the next one, this particular application, we believe, would not need to go through the regulatory process. So this was a board decision on the structuring of this application.
Thank you, Mr. Jimenez. Any questions from members?
This is Christina Swallow. I just wanted to make a comment. I should have on the last one. I just wanted to thank you and your team for doing the research needed to get us to where we are on the last item and these next 2 items. And really laying the groundwork. I know that we still don't have our executive director. We're working on that search. So I wanted to thank you and your team for getting us to this point. This is important that we do this and that we get the feedback from the community. But we wouldn't be able to get feedback if we didn't have something to start with. So thank you.
Thank you, Director. And all credit goes to Mr. Jimenez, who has been carrying this boulder directly up the hill. Any other questions or comments for Mr. Jimenez on agenda item number 8?
Yes, Treasurer Conine, this is Director Reynolds on. I just wanted to emphasize the fact that this is an excellent application. We do financing applications in BNI for bonds, and so Mr. Jimenez has done a very good job on this. I would indicate that on the second to last page, you have Articles of Corporation, Certificate of Good Standing. I think we need to make sure that it's clarified that they need to be registered and certified in Nevada. So as part of that process too. It's really assumed in here, but I want to make sure that that's clarified.
Thank you, Director Eric Jimenez, for the record. Happy to incorporate that in this section, and I think also any other section in the application to just ensure that we're focusing on organizations that are based here.
That is correct. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Jimenez and Mr. Reynolds. Any other questions from members?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, Director Bobzien here, and I want to join in the offering of kudos to Mr. Jimenez in putting this together. It's very comprehensive, and I think it definitely hits the mark. I would offer one encouraged edit. I believe it's in part 3. There is a question asking the applicant to describe their environmental impact, and if I understand the purpose of that question, it's to connect with the climate section that is found in our next agenda item in that document, which I thought was very well done. I think if anything, I would offer that we strengthen that just a little bit to point applicants to that particular section. I liked that you crosswalked into the climate strategy as well as our statutory GHG reduction goals, and just firm that question up a little bit more to indicate that we're looking for an acknowledgement and an alignment with our climate goals.
Thank you, Director, and Eric Jimenez, for the record. Happy to incorporate that. And if I could bother you into the future, I think we will lean on you as the member on this board with the climate expertise to make sure that we get that as strong as possible.
Happy to review.
All right, thank you. Any additional questions from members? Hearing none, I will accept a motion on this item.
So moved.
We have a motion from Vice Chair Swallow, and do we have a second?
Second.
All right, we have a motion and a second. Any discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
And we have a unanimous. Moving on, thank you to number 9. Approval of a 30-day public comment period for staff to solicit feedback on the establishment of criteria, policies, and guidelines for qualified borrowers and to report back to this board regarding any such comments and approval to pursue the regulation-making process where needed. Mr. Jimenez.
Thank you again, Mr. Treasurer. Beginning on page 55 of your packets, you will see this particular agenda item, and I think as Member Bobzien was talking about earlier, this kind of is the meat of how this bank will select projects and operate and ensure, I think, that we're getting the types of projects and the types of jobs that we want to see in this state. Again, California had a similar document to this, so structurally, we're thinking about it the same way. This document, we are intending to go through the regulatory process. So this 30-day window, if approved by this board, would open. Then concurrently, we would begin the regulatory workshop and hearing process to try to formalize this so things could live on if there were new board members or anything like that. Broadly, we wanted to focus on ensuring that borrowers had guidelines, policies, and procedures before they went to apply so they understood what the responsibilities on applicants were and what the state would expect from them. We see that in qualified borrowers and the application criteria. We go through a list of projects. Most of those are statutory in nature as we get through the renewable energy projects. In some of the sections that weren't as clearly defined in statute and based on some feedback that we've already gotten from folks in the community and from our friends in labor, we started to expand some of the other types of projects as we started to think about what was possible with that bank. You'll see this in the digital infrastructure project section. We have worked with OSIT on figuring out ways that we could make sure that this is as broad as possible, understanding that many of these digital projects we may not contemplate here today. So ensuring that we have a broad enough framework that if some new technology or some new infrastructure needed to take place in Southern Nevada to advance our tourism industry or anything like that, that this board could finance a project like that without having to go through the regulatory hurdles every single time. You will also see, and I think this was important, it was very important in the legislative discussion, we've further defined some types of projects that could be funded with the social infrastructure projects, and I think you'll see that reflected in what's contemplated with the $20 million of the Affordable Housing Investment Trust. So if members have any thoughts on those as well, we would be super encouraged to receive those. Moving on, on page 61, you will start to see more of a process that applicants can expect when they go through the process. So ensuring that when they're submitting that application, they understand what documents they're going to need, what types of projects this bank will may not be able to consider, being that we're using general obligation bonds that do have to be paid back, understanding that we don't have an unlimited window in which to fund projects, and we want to put people to work as quickly as possible. So understanding that you need to have the relevant permitting for your project, listing out some of the various sources of financing repayment. We worked with State Bond Council and with our financial advisors for the bond issuance on these types of sources of repayment, and we believe it is fairly inclusive. And then kind of moving through what applicants can expect through that application process. I want to spend a second on page 62, moving on. Some of the discussion we've had here today with the Affordable Housing Investment Trust and with our friends from the apprenticeship sphere, we wanted to make sure that this bank would be employing Nevadans on projects, that we were building a pipeline of workers on those projects, and that we were also ensuring that groups and individuals who haven't been able to historically participate within the good paying wages of the building trades had opportunities to do that. So we traveled to San Francisco to meet with the City Build program, which is one of the largest apprenticeship utilization programs for affordable housing and every other building. We modeled a local hire provision in these bylaws modeled after the city of San Francisco. We also worked with our friends in the Northern Nevada Building and Construction Trades and the Southern Nevada Building Trades Unions to figure out what has worked best in the past for apprenticeship utilization and how can we encourage projects that are being financed by this bank to utilize new apprentices to give those people a pathway to the middle class. Finally, you will see those references to climate, environmental, and sustainability standards. We tried to tie this to the 2020 climate strategy. Director Bobzian, I would defer to you on if there needs to be different targets or if we can go further or anything like that. But we really think it is important to say from the get-go that this bank is committed to projects that do no negative environmental harm. And then finally, this is something that came up in the legislative session. We are very aware that certain communities have been historically disenfranchised and disadvantaged, and setting what we believe is achievable but wouldn't tie the board's hand. We'd like to suggest a 40% goal of all projects in disadvantaged communities, which are defined here, to ensure that every community has the opportunity to recover and respond to their infrastructure needs. With that, we are still working on a number of things. One of the documents you will see probably at your next board meeting will be an interest rate methodology. We are not there yet, but we are working on that as we anticipate the bond issuance sometime in April. With that, I know that was a lot, but happy to take any questions if there are any.
Thank you, Mr. Jimenez. And again, I'll just start off by saying thank you to you for all the work that's been done, as well as other members of the Treasury, our consultants over at PFM, and other experts in the space. This has been many hands, our friends in the Attorney General's office, many hands making light work, lighter work, I suppose. So thank you for your efforts on that front. With that, I'll turn it over to any members for questions. Any questions in Carson City?
Yes, Treasurer Conine, I had 3 comments, which I've supplied, but I just want to put them on the record. 3 minor comments. One is that for the definition of apprentice, add to the end of the sentence, and meets the requirements of NRS 610.010 subsection 2 as applicable. So we have that tied into what the state law is on apprenticeships. And then for the definition of contractor, add to the end of the sentence and meets the requirements of NRS 624 as applicable. So that ties into the definition of a contractor licensed in the state of Nevada. The third one is, and this is really, it could be up for discussion, but under readiness and feasibility, under permitting, add certificate of occupancy as a trigger for completion on housing projects. And we typically do that with our housing projects when we bond. So those are the 3 suggestions that I would make in regard to this application, which I think is, the regulations, which I think are very good. and incorporate a lot of the areas that I wanted to see, so thank you.
Thank you, Director. We will work to incorporate those changes. And I think it's important just to add real quick, we're doing this through a robust public comment window because we're not the smartest people here, and we think that all voices should be heard. We just did a 75-day listening tour, so what's a little more listening, but thank you. We will make those changes.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Jimenez and Member Reynolds. Member Bobzian, Member Brown, any questions or comments?
Nothing to add, thank you.
Okay.
Nope, nothing
All
here.
right. All right. Thank you all very much. With that, I will take a motion on this item.
So moved.
All right. We've got a motion. Do I have a second?
Second.
Motion and a second. Any discussion? All in favor say aye.
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 Motion passes unanimously. Thank you. And we'll move on to informational item number 10, board to receive an update on the search for an executive director of the State Infrastructure Bank. Mr. Jimenez.
Thank you, Mr. Treasurer. This one will be very brief. Just wanted to update the board that we did start the search for an executive director that's been posted, and we've been actively seeking applicants, both locally and through some of the national infrastructure organizations and some of the other government finance organizations as well. To date, we have received 13 applications, which we will compile and present to the board for a possible recommendation to the governor for his approval of any qualified applicants that may meet that criteria. So we are working on it. Happy to take any questions, but hopefully that will be an upcoming agenda, upcoming board meeting.
Thank you, Mr. Jimenez. Any questions from members? All right. Hearing none, I will close that item. Thank you, Mr. Jimenez. Move on to agenda item number 11, public comment. This is our second period for public comment. Comments from the public will be taken at this time. We intend to limit them to 3 minutes. Do we have any public comment in Las Vegas? All right, seeing none. Do we have any public comment in Carson City? And confirming we have no public comment on the phone? Oh, there is public comment in Carson City. I'm so sorry. Hello. Please go ahead.
On here?
Oh.
Now it's on. Perfect. Excellent.
There you go, Ms. Hess.
Good morning, Treasurer Conine, members of the board, Governor Sisolak. Christine Hess with the Nevada Housing Coalition, of course, our statewide nonprofit to advance and promote affordable housing in Nevada. Just so pleased with the conversations this morning at the end of the legislature to see this bill come through. In fact, I just want to applaud the governor, treasurer, and the legislature. Affordable housing is indeed infrastructure. Investing in affordable housing bolsters economic growth and productivity, connects workers to communities of opportunity, improves health and education outcomes, and positively impacts support services while significantly decreasing other costs. In support of the $20 million allocation, and excited to have the Northern Nevada Building Trades presentation by Mr. Benner and Mr. Chandler, and the work that's been done nationwide to increase those impacts here in Nevada. As we all know, we have actually some of our country's most severe shortages of affordable housing. So this opportunity is welcome. The affordable housing solutions are complex, and the opportunities to solve them are many, and this is one important one. So I just want to thank you all for the time this morning and for your consideration of the proposal, and look forward to a formal comment during the public period. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Hess, and thanks for all your work in the affordable housing space. Any additional public comment in Carson City? All right, and confirming that there's no public comment on the phone, Eric, you could just give me a wave.
There's no public comment.
Excellent. With that, I will accept a motion to adjourn. We have a motion. All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you, everybody. Let's get to work.